ahead and get started. I'll pray for us. Father, I pray you help us today as we study Greek. I pray you encourage us. I pray that we love you more. I pray that we would see the beauty of Christ more and the power of Christ. I pray you help us with the vocabulary, the forms, biblical theology. We pray that you help us with life. And we pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. So I didn't have time to do the PowerPoint today, so we'll use BibleWorks. Who can say John 1, 1-5 in Greek for us? Good.
It's been a while since I've done this, so it might be a little rusty. NRK ein halagos, kai halagos ein proston theon, kai theon, theos ein halagos, hutos ein.
Sorry.
NRK, it's like totally. I'm just gonna look at me. Okay. I gotta start over. NRK ein halagos, kai halagos ein proston theon, kai theos ein halagos. Hutos ein NRK proston theon, ponta diatu agenita, kai chorus atu agenita udehen, hokaganen, enauto zoe ein, kai he zoe ein, kai he zoe ein, enauto zoe ein.
Mm-hmm.
Kai Topos Ente Scatia Fine Kai He Scatia Fine. No, I just repeated myself, didn't I?
But you're right. Kai he Scatia
Fine. Man. Kai He Scatia Fine.
No, I think you're at Kai Topos Ente Scatia Fine.
I can picture the word. There's this is gonna annoy me. You got it.
That's your brain pushing this farther back.
I don't get this. I'm gonna be so annoyed. You're gonna get it. No. What comes after it? Okay, oh gosh. Okay, so
Kai Topos Ente Scatia Fine.
Oh, I think I know it. This is no. I don't think I know it. You do.
You almost have it.
You're saying one word that I can't remember. What's next?
Got like 4 words.
You know this.
So I always remember that whatever's at the end goes to the beginning of the next one. So we're at Kai Topos Ente Scatia Fine. Kai. And if you want to push something like just as far back as you'll go in your long-term memory, leave it without looking it up. Because then you'll go off and you'll be going your merry way and you've got this little helper in your brain looking for wherever it is. And it'll find it like 3 hours from now. But then it'll move all the way back and far. So you want to just skip it?
No. I think I'm missing something, but the only thing I can think of is Kai Auto Ukalaben, but that's not it.
That's it.
Oh, that's it? Oh my god.
Kai He Scatia Auto Ukalaben. That's exactly right. Okay, so who can do the Lord's Prayer? We're through
Can I read?
Toys Aphelatis Hamon, I think, is how far we're. Who wants to try it? Good.
Pater Himon ha en tois uranois hagiastato ta armasu eltheto he basileasu ginetheto te he ta thelemasu has.
Oh, that's not going to help us.
Has in urano kai epiges ton arton himon ton epiusion das himen. It's like samurai.
Samurai, right?
Kai himen, no, kai face
Kai Ephes,
himen aphelemta himon.
right? Ta Aphelemata Hamon, right?
I think that's all right.
That is enough. Very good. Post Kai Hemes Afekamin Toys Aphelatis is what we're working on now.
Okay.
But good, that's perfect. So where did we start in Mark today?
It was 29.
29. Right here. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she knew in her body that she is healed from the whip. That's what it says. From the scourge, we would say, I think. Or is this where we started? So did I just read our first one?
Yes,
Sorry.
Sorry, we left off at 28. I guess this is the first
28.
one. We misinformed you.
Sorry. For she was saying, if I should just touch his clothes, I will be saved, but healed. Parallel account says that she touched his crespedion, which is a technical term for that blue tassel you're supposed to wear if you're a Jewish man. And the Jewish tassel is so that when you see it, even today, if you see Hasidic Jews, they'll have the long curly, because they're not shaving the edges of their beard. That's the reason why they do. And if you look, they'll always have just like an inch of blue tassel, and that's the crespedion that they're wearing.
Why do we translate that as garment?
Well, it's garment here, but the parallel count, it may be in Matthew, identifies as not just any garment, it's actually that tassel that they wear on the, I think the law in Leviticus is you wear it on the edge of your robe, and it's to remind you to obey the Ten Commandments when you see that.
Matthew would have written about that because of who the audience he was writing.
He's writing to Jewish Christians, absolutely.
They also called
Tzitzis, yeah, that's right. Put prayer shawls, and tzitzi, or however you spell it, is the Hebrew spelling, and crespedion is how it's translated in Greek. That's it. That's exactly it. All right, so who wants to do the next one? I should call on someone, should I not? Why don't we start with Joshua? You like to do this one? This is right. Right, and this is the word spring or fountain, right, of her blood. Right, and there's probably a locatival dative, so you could say in her body. Right, and I mean, this is just like the actual word for scourge. And with body parts, even though it doesn't say her body, With body parts, you don't have to say whose it is. You just say the body, and it implies it's her body. So you can do that with anything like his hand, his head. You don't have to say the his part. This, I think, is it's actually a perfect, that she had been healed. I was reading it as a present, but it's actually the perfect, that she had been healed from this scourge. Very good. Cody, would you like to do the next one? Oh, wow, these are long, aren't they?
I think it says, and immediately Jesus, knowing in himself, power of him had left or something.
Right, having gone. So this is a feminine participle, and it's feminine because this word power is feminine. So you see, the power. He knew in himself the power from him having gone out. All right?
And turning to the crowd, he said, is that what or
Who?
who touched me?
Who touched the garments? And I think it's my garments in English. Okay, so I have a theological question. When Jesus became a man, did he set aside powers as God? So some people say yes and some people say no. The traditional answer comes from Athanasius, who's called the Black Dwarf, because he's the black man who saved Orthodox Christianity from becoming Arian. They said to Athanasius, "You're fighting against the world." And he said, "Contra mundum." I'm willing to fight against the world. And he fought and won. The whole world was Arian. And he knew that wasn't what the Bible taught. And he's a little short black guy, and so they call him the Black Dwarf. But he's a hero to us. So I think either he or one of the Gregories came up with this statement, and this is how you can judge what orthodoxy is. Remaining what he was, he became what he was not. That's the little moniker of remaining what he was, he became. I'm pretty sure it is Gregory, not Athanasius. But anyway, so when you're talking about Jesus, Jesus has two separate natures, right? He's fully God and fully man. Everything that makes man man was true of Jesus. So he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. He could sleep. He could be helpless in his mother's arms. He could be hungry. He could die. None of those things can be true of his divine nature. Which means that Orthodox Christianity has always taught that Jesus is experiencing two things at the same time. He's not two separate people, like he's got two computer monitors and he's doing this and that. He's one person, but he's experiencing two things at the same time. Which means that Colossians 2, 8, and 9, in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form. So everything that makes God God was true of Jesus bodily. So he could say to Nathanael, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. And Nathanael knew nobody was with him under the fig tree, and Jesus is saying, I was there. We have no idea what he's talking about, but Nathanael knew, and he said, you're the Son of God. Jesus could say, where two or three of you are gathered together in my name, there I am in your midst. Before Abraham was, I am. All those are true of his divine nature. None of those are true of his human nature. Which means Jesus can know and not know things at the same time. Jesus can be limited by a body. Right now in heaven, wherever heaven is, Jesus is limited by a human body. But at the same time, he is not limited by a human body. So he's experiencing in the unity of his person, being a man and being God, but he isn't two people, he's one person. So the technical term for that is called the communicatio idiomatum, the communication of the individual attributes. So that to the unity of Jesus' person, he was able to communicate everything that belonged to those two human natures and experiencing them both at the same time. And here's why that's important. I heard on the radio the other day someone say Jesus suffered, and it was like Moody, or maybe not Moody, but some conservative show, and the guy said, hell can't be eternal because Jesus paid for hell and it was only 6 hours on the cross. Wrong answer. Jesus is communicating infinity to the unity of his person. He suffered not only eternity, but billions of eternities that all of us owed to God. However many people are ultimately going to be saved, he suffered all of that on the cross so that he could say seconds before he died, it has been paid in full. He did that because he was able to communicate infinity to his suffering. So as in the unity of his person, the only person who knows what it's like to suffer an eternity in hell is the person who's going to decide whether people go there or not. And he's suffered billions of eternities because that's what he paid for on the cross. But when you come to this verse, this is absolutely true. He did not know who touched him. He could feel that. But it doesn't negate that in him all the fullness of deity dwelled in bodily form, so that he's also experiencing, just as he's experiencing in heaven now, the limitation of a human body and being omnipresent. It's not his body that's omnipresent, it's his person. But he's experiencing both those things. And he's going to experience the limitation of a human body, and in terms of his human nature, the submission of that human nature to God the Father forever. And that's part of the price that he paid to get us into heaven. So in heaven, he's going to receive worship. His divine nature deserves worship. He's one essence with the Father. But in addition to that, he's going to be subject to the Father for all of us. And God the Father says, if you're willing to do that, I'm willing to accept them as righteous forever. So when you come to a verse like this, it's clear that Jesus is experiencing things that we experience. But that's not the total story. There's more going on than just this verse. This is real. It isn't a pretend not knowing. He really feels like what it's like to not know. When he was asleep in his mother's arms, he knew what it felt like to be completely helpless. And at the same moment, he's the one holding the atoms of her body together. She's holding him in helplessness in her arms, and he's holding the molecules of her body together. And that's not me. That's traditional. And I mean, Wayne Grudem totally ripped off that paragraph from his systematic theology, if you want to read it. So.
Okay, sorry, this is a lot, but in instances where, like with this passage where Jesus is that because he chose in that moment, or does that have to do with like submission to the Father, or like?
He's knowing and not knowing at the same time. He's limited by a body and not limited by a body at the same time. He's finite and infinite at the same time. He's bound by time and not bound by time at the same time, which is why God can say things like, the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. It's like, no, it was after. And God says, no, it was before. Jesus is somehow in the unity of his person. So you don't want to say Jesus was two people, where you got kind of two computer monitors and now I'm God, now I'm man. That's Nestorianism. It isn't that the two computer feeds kind of garble each other. That's Eutychianism. It isn't that he's just a man. That's Arianism. It isn't that he's just God. That's modalistic monarchianism. It's that he has two natures, but he's one person. That he's experiencing, he empties himself by adding to himself, not by giving up something. Yeah, this is important too. He's experiencing what we would have experienced. He experienced in 6 hours what we would have experienced in an unending eternity. And it's only that he's infinite that he can pay for my finite, infinite debt that I owe God. He communicates infinity to the unity of his person so that he can suffer eternity, and not just my eternity, but mine and yours and all the people who will ever be saved. And I think he did it like not one after another. I think he did the whole thing at the same time, which is just mind-blowing to think about.
I don't know if this is a silly question, if you can even separate the two, like traits of like being omniscient, but also omnipresent, like with him knowing what someone was doing and he wasn't physically there. Could you argue that that's both an omniscience and omnipresence issue, or you can say it's like one or the other?
It is, but his body, Jesus' body is limited. When he was in Galilee, his body wasn't in Jerusalem. But he was in Jerusalem because God's in Jerusalem. Remaining what he was, he became what he was not. The person holding the molecules of the atoms of the universe together right now is Jesus. Hebrews says this, holds all things through him, all things, 1 Corinthians 8, 4 through 6. And clearly that through whom all things are is a God thing in Romans 11:36. So Jesus is doing the God-like thing of holding the molecules of and that's all the molecules. Molecules in my body, the molecules in the farthest interstellar, as far away that the person of Jesus is holding both those together at the same time, but he's still limited by a body in heaven. And that Jesus is, the text says that he dwells in all of eternity as a tent. Ever been in a tent? Like you go in a tent, like, okay, this is kind of what's there, Isaiah says God experienced eternity like that. Oh, this is nice. Kind of quaint, but nice. All time, all history, forever. All past, all future. Jesus could show us things that happened in time. He could show us contingencies that happen in time. He's experienced all that. But this is true. He's also experiencing what it was like not to know So that Orthodox Christianity has always said that Jesus knew and not knew at the same time.
You said that he's still limited by a body in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
How is that, because after he rises from the dead and ascends into heaven, there's some sort of more.
But it's still the body. He says, put your finger. He can eat. Bring me fish.
Whereas God.
But he can also walk through a wall. So it's a real body.
But it's that same sort of.
It's a body plus somehow. I mean, we're going to live forever in these bodies, only glorified. It isn't a bodiless, and it isn't some spiritual world that's not, it's a real world. It's a real Garden of Eden. But it's going to be different. So Jesus, to get us to be able to experience that, was willing to incarnate forever. And as an incarnate person, he's going to bow down and worship the one God of monotheism. And at the same time, he's receiving the worship of the one God of monotheism because he shares the unity of the essence. But he's willing to incarnate forever. It isn't, that judgment happens and God says, okay, now we got that out of the way, de-incarnate. No. He's added the limitation of a physical body forever so that he's going to experience that forever because he knew that it's that over-the-top gesture that would finally win our hearts to make us untemptable by evil. And the scriptures say that when he rose from the dead, this Colossians 3, that your perfected body was joined to him mystically, so that when he rose, you rose. You actually rose from the dead before you were ever born. And he's got that perfected body of yours with him in heaven, seated right now. God's interacting with you in heaven right now, untemptable by evil, perfectly obedient. And so Paul says, seek the things above where your life is hidden with Christ in God. In heaven, I can resist overeating. I can say no to eating the whole packet of breath mints. In heaven, mystically joined with Jesus, I'm perfectly obedient to God's law. And it's a real body. It's not a pretend body. This one's going to die. And God's going to somehow connect this one with that one. But that one's going to be the one I live in forever. And the same for you. Everything that's true of Jesus' humanity, it says we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. It's going to be true of us. So, who touched me? Who touched my garment?
Extra punishment.
My brain is like that good kind of hurt right now.
Your brain one day is going to be so processing everything. You're going to be like beyond Albert Einstein.
How is that? Because you're here and there, but not experience there. Is it kind of like how Jesus was experiencing both?
I think we're going to be able to ask Jesus, hey, I want to go see something in history, and Jesus is going to say, sure, let's go. Laurel, would you like to do this one for us? Crushing you, right? In other words, the disciples were saying, Jesus, are you sure you understand this rightly? Yeah, pretty much. Mateus, would you do this one? Looking around.
So, and looking around, Dane is seeing.
To see, right? And he was looking around to see.
The last word is connected to poieo.
Right, so it's the aorist feminine participial ending, aorist active participle.
So I'm going to say, he was looking around to see who had done it.
Right, and what's the gender of the person who did it? So he knows it's a woman.
Oh.
And like he doesn't know who touched him, but he knows that one person touched him differently
Differently.
than everybody else present.
And that she was a woman, not a man.
Are we sure that he doesn't know, or is he just saying it like that so that she confesses?
So if you say that Jesus didn't really experience limitation, you would be committing an early error called docetism, where Jesus, and this was one of the first heresies, that Jesus was God, but he only seemed to be a man. He was God, but the second computer monitor was kind of not a real one. And that's not what it's saying. It's like he's experiencing everything both those natures had to give, and he really didn't know.
It's not a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, he is the one holding that woman's body together. The hairs of her head were numbered. The one God has one will that expresses itself into three persons, so that as the person of Jesus, he's experiencing that one essence. He wasn't like God. He was homoiousion. He was homoousion. The same substance that made God God is the same substance. And Jesus possesses all of it. Not 99.9, all of it.
So it's the will of God, or sorry, it was the will of God for Jesus to know that someone had touched him, but not know who.
In terms of his human nature. But everything that's true of the one God, including what's called a satiety, that is Jesus God derivatively, or is he God a se, from himself? And orthodoxy says he is God a se, from himself. His godness isn't a derivative godness. He's homoousion, the same substance. Yeah. So what is that like in the universe? That is like nothing you've ever encountered in the universe. There's nothing like that in the universe. That's completely unique. And we're going to get to spend eternity with the entity of the one God expressing himself in three persons. All right. Alex, would you like to do this one?
But the woman, fearing and trembling,
having known. So that looks like a perfect participle, and it's from oida, but because oida is translated I know, the perfect participle becomes the present participle, but I'm going to do it having known.
Having known what happened to her, she came and fell down before him, to him,
Right? Yeah.
for him, and told him all the truth.
Perfect. Very good. Rebecca, would you like to do this one?
Sure. So she just told him all the stuff that like happened.
Yeah.
And he would like says to her, so the odd day, and it's like
He said. Yeah, that's how you do it in Greek. If you want to, like in a paperback novel, you know, they won't say he said, she said. They'll just go back and forth with the paragraphs. Greek does that with hada, or hada, heda. They're just flipping the subjects.
So he says, daughter,
Your pistis,
your faith,
your faith, has sozoed you.
I don't know.
Has saved you. Your faith has saved you. Which is interesting. He's using the word save of physical stuff. Maybe physical and spiritual stuff. Your faith has saved you. Hupaga eis erine kai isti hugies apotes mastigasu. What beautiful words.
It's something about you've been healed from the disease.
Right. Go into peace. You've been in tumult. Go into peace. And then, so this is the present active imperative of Ami. Continually be hugies from your whip. He's saying to her, you're not going to experience that affliction anymore. You're healed, and continually be healthy from that whip. You can say that of all the stuff that's wrong with all of us. Jonathan, would you like to do this one? Genitive absolute. Right. So when, since, or after, I would do it while he was talking, comma. From the ruler of the synagogue, people, legontes, has died. Your daughter has died.
In my translation, it said that it could be died or drowned. Is there any significance to that?
So it's from Apathenesco, the second aorist, third singular from Apathenesco. Your daughter died. And then they say this, te ete skoules ton didaskalon. Why are you still troubling the teacher? Your daughter's dead. Why are you still troubling the teacher. And don't you know, Jairus wonders if this unnamed woman hadn't stopped Jesus. That he was probably really ticked off that she had stopped. And I love what Jesus says. How far did we get today?
42.
Sorry?
42.
42. Can I do the rest of them? And Jesus, having overheard the word spoken, says to the chief synagogue ruler, "Me phobu, stop fearing, monon pistua, continually believe, only believe." And he didn't allow anyone. Greek says he did not allow no one, but he really didn't allow anybody with him to follow except Peter and Jacob and John, the brother of Jacob. And they go into the house of the synagogue ruler, and he sees the commotion, the tharubon, and crying people. Right, and much non-talking. That's what that word means.
Is that like a traditional sort of like mourning thing, or is it just like a random?
These are paid people. These are paid mourners.
They'd already been paid. You just died.
Or we're going to be paid, I think. It's how you... No pay for you.
He's alive, you can go home.
They showed up fast.
And having gone in, he says to them, "Why are you making a commotion and crying? The little bitty child did not die, but sleeps." Okay, so I'm misunderstanding here. Jesus says she's not dead, she's asleep, but that little girl's dead. She is dead as she's ever going to be, and Jesus says she's not dead. So who do you believe? If Jesus says she's not dead, she's not dead. I don't know where this is going to go, but like, she looks as dead can be. And Jesus is saying her reality is not that. Her reality is different. I wonder if it's any different when he says of us, "You are righteous." When God says, "Let there be light," there is light. Our entire life is a cosmic microsecond between God saying and it being our experience reality. The little child is not dead. The little child did not die, but she sleeps. And 40 says, and they laughed at him. That's galao. Galao is laugh. So what do you do when you add a compound to a verb? What does it do to the verb? It intensifies. So if galao is laugh, what is katagalao? They laugh. So these people went from to, what are you, an idiot? That's not what you want to say to the sovereign God of the universe. And he threw all of them out. He didn't say, "Please go out." He grabbed them by the collar and threw them out the door. Isn't that what it says, ekbalo? He ekbaloed all of them out. And having paralambano, the father of the little child and the mother of the little child, and those with him, he went into where the little child was. And having touched the hand of the little child, he says to her, Talitha kum. So that's Aramaic. Talitha, Talitha. The tha part is the thee. The ah part is the thee. And the talith is the little girl part. And then kum, I had an Aramaic professor who told me that it should be printed Talitha Kumi, because Kumi is the second imperatival form of the Aramaic. And he's right, it is second imperatival form, but he's wrong. Jesus didn't say Talitha Kumi, he said Talitha Kum, because Mark translates it for us, which is being meth hermanu aminon, after hermeneutics. Do you see that? After being interpreted, which is after interpretation, ta karasion, O little maiden girl or something. To you I say, get up. So Mark doesn't translate it as an imperative. He translates it as a command. So the Aramaic is actually the infinitive. Little girl to stand up is what I think the Aramaic says. But Mark is saying what that means is, little girl, I tell you, get up. And straightway, telkarasion, Anna stayed and started running around, peripateo, for she was 12 years old. The woman had been in affliction 12 years. This little girl had lived 12 years. This woman's life, unnamed, was misery. This little girl's life was probably, Pollyanna until she died or got sick. But they both come to Jesus for help. And they were greatly amazed with megale, ecstasy, and he commanded them many things that nobody should know anything. And he said, give her something to eat. So he told the parents, don't tell anybody what happened. So they walk out the door and they're holding the little girl's hand and they say, what happened? And the parents say, nothing. All right, I'll see you on Wednesday.